All right, hello, everyone. Welcome to Chillin' with Millen. I have here today one of my favorite people at Microsoft. He is super cool. His name is Scott Prather. Scott, will you please introduce yourself?
Hey, Mel, it's great to be with you today. So Scott Prather, I run the customer success organization for manufacturing within the U.S.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. I like to start these out with a fun and unique fact. Can you give us one?
Probably a funny, unique fact I think is, I have done a full circle in my life. So I was born in Kentucky, but I actually grew up in California.
Hmm.
Uh, Grew up there through college, lived in Boston for a while, and then came back to California. But I got introduced into computing at a young age when we moved out to California in the mid 70s. My father worked for Atari, so I was always the neat video game house kid.
I didn't know that one. That's cool. I'm gonna tell you folks, another fun fact about Scott, he's not gonna tell you. This guy can pop and lock with the best of the folks. Him and I have tried to do some virtual dance battles. I'm not gonna make him do there he goes. Look at him. He's got skills. Well, thank you for joining, Scott. Would you go ahead and share your screen and show us how you use Teams to achieve more?
Yeah, that's great. So, I mean, one of the things for me, Millen, is how do I get time back, right? As most people that are kind of going through any kind of managing a business or managing of an organization, you're always looking for how to be the most efficient as possible, right?
Yeah.
And historically, I'd always gotten too much stuff in email. Didn't have the context, it wasn't streamed, it wasn't easy to follow, things like that. So we really tried to make a move to have people work more in teams as we
Mhm.
go. And I think that one of the things that I'm showing here on the left-hand side is this is my teams things. I'm part of several teams. I can't scroll down to all of them, and I can't kind of click in all these channels because there's, employee private, company private, and customer private data. But I'm going to
Yeah.
try to show you as much as I can.
Let me ask you real quick too, Scott, just as we're talking about it, this is a common problem. Help me understand why you would want an email versus why you would want something in Teams.
Well, let me give you an example of which is on the screen right now. So this is our manufacturing organization's team, and in
Mhm.
here we have announcements, right? So one of the announcements you frequently get is, "Hey, somebody new joined the team,"
Yeah.
and this is one about Melody Axelrod, great CSAM that joined the manufacturing CSU recently.
Hmm.
And so instead of sending out an email to all thousand or so people that says, "Hey, Melody's joined the team," uh, John come in here and actually put an announcement in place that says, "Hey, this is the background. Here's what it is," and then you can see everybody's kind of responded there. So
Yeah.
historically, the problem was email compounds itself. So as John would have sent this out, I would have gotten 400, 500 replies in my inbox about like welcoming Melody to your team, which is great. But you can see here
Yeah.
everything streamed in context. Melody can see that.
Yeah. I could say, if I was Melody, and shout out to Melody if you're watching this, I know I would appreciate this more too, just because I could see like all the love coming my way. Like there's,
Right.
that captures that sentiment on the top, Scott. And hearts, and I
Yep.
get to see everyone's welcome message in a brief snapshot versus scrolling through emails. So I like that a lot. Very cool. What are some other? So walk me through the story, Scott. I'm a new employee on your team. You announced me
Yeah.
on here. How else could I navigate this?
Well, I mean, it's great because, if you are Melody and you kind of come into the team here, you might say, "Hey, how do I do something?" Or, Microsoft's such a large organization, how do I navigate around it? So they can easily come into a channel here. We
Hmm.
have a Power App that we've developed in here. And this Power App basically kind of goes through the most common questions for them. So they can kind of go through and say, "Hey, what about my quota and compensation? How do I retain my earnings? How do I do that, right? How do I look at the scorecard and how do we manage those kinds of things, right?" So very simply, again, in context of the larger team, right in operations, here's the questions that are most commonly asked.
Oh man, I love that because this in and of itself will reduce emails too, right? They're not going to be
Right.
emailing people for questions. They have an app for that. So that's fantastic.
That's right. That's right. And you can see the other thing that we've done, Mill, and I think is pretty unique and interesting about Teams is, historically you used to have all these different groups. You would have DLs and email, or you would have things like different areas within SharePoint or things like that,
Yeah.
that all were focused around smaller communities. In
Hmm.
Teams, you can easily have these what we call private channels. And so
Right.
what we've done in our organization is we've created private channels for each of the roles. And then within those, people can go and kind of have that safe space to communicate about their issues, right?
That makes sense. Yeah, and you could just assign who you want to those. Let me ask you, since you've done that, Scott, how have you noticed? I mean, have you noticed a big shift in the culture of collaboration before you had this team and it was all on email versus after? I mean, how are you noticing that difference in engagement?
Yeah, I mean, the engagement's large, right? I mean, just in terms of how many people are participating across this team on a daily basis. And I think, again, because of that combination of contextualism to private channels to, cross EOU communication, I think it gives everybody that one space to go, which everybody's always looked for, right? I've been in the industry for 30 years now. We've
Yeah.
talked about this concept of universal inbox for a very long time. This is my universal inbox where everything is in one place.
That makes a lot of sense. So the question, this all makes sense to me. I know I work with a lot of different executives across the industry, and they would like this if they saw this, Scott. What would be your advice to them to start to incorporate this and make that culture change? Because let's face it, Scott, even when Teams was rolled out to us at Microsoft, we weren't all jumping to the gun right away. So how do we change that culture?
I think there's two things. One is you have to be purposeful, right? You can't just like sprout a team and then hope everybody kind of comes there, right? You have to have some structure to it. You have to have a purpose for why it's there. And then I would say the biggest component after that is participation. You yourself have to make the commitment. So if I, Millen, say, hey, Millen, I'm going to communicate to you about, let's say something that we went through here, your quota or your scorecard kind of a thing. And I'm only going to put that in Teams, Millen. So you have to go there to see it. You're going to go there to see it, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that we have to make sure that if we want people to participate into it, we must commit to that kind of communication.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And it reminds me of one of our dear mutual friends, Stephanie Corals.
Right.
I remember Stephanie told me when she was launching this with her team, she said, look, folks, for I think it was like a week or 2 weeks, the only way you're going to get a hold of me is on Teams. And the only way I'm going to respond is if it's on Teams. And that actually enabled people to start to use it and like it. So similar to what you're saying, that's great. So Scott, we have these things in Teams too, these apps like Poly and, there's a number of different apps. And I know you and I were talking that you use Poly. What are some things that you use it for to even get that engagement greater?
Yeah, so you can see on the right-hand side, there's a lot of areas that I just pin because they're common tools, right? So Poly is one of them. Again, just from a sensitive perspective, I can't click into it necessarily, but
Sure.
Poly gives me employee sentiment. So I could be asking questions about, hey, how does everybody feel about the current change? Or how are we feeling about how we're servicing our customers? Or what do people think about the new product? And getting that sentiment back that gives me a real pulse on the community, right? And I can do that at multiple different levels, which is neat. And the other thing I didn't mention about private channels is I could take a poly that says, hey, how is everybody thinking about the change?
Mm-hmm.
And I could send it across multiple different private channels all at one time, which allows them then to have their own kind of private discussion about that feedback, right?
Yep.
Another one, Millen, that I use all the time is Power BI.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm living in the data all the time. We're a data-driven organization. We're looking at all of the different signals that we're getting from our tools, from the field, from the business itself, and really trying to gain real good insights to make decisions off of that. So that's one that's there. And then insights is the third one, and that's when you think about it, who am I not following up with that I should be? Or where have I dropped something that I told somebody in a thread that I would follow up with, and then I haven't yet necessarily. So that's where these tools are my lifeblood in terms of keeping me on pace and on time.
And that's such an important point, Scott. For folks watching this, if you see those 3 dots right under where Scott is at, if you just click those 3 dots, you can add any app you want and pin that to your navigation rail if your IT department has enabled that. And then you would just right click and click pin. So that's a great way to customize your day-to-day, Scott. Perfect. So just kind of wrapping this up, Scott. So So let's say you set this up, you've created it, it's mature, but again, you're getting all these emails from certain, let's call them repeat offenders.
Right.
I know in Outlook, we've tried to make it simple for people to shift it to Teams. So do you use that share to Teams feature, or how do you get that repeat offender to get a hold of you in Teams?
Oh yeah, I'd love to do it. I'd love to do it a couple of different ways. One is I'll sometimes just take the message and share it to Teams because there's a button right in Outlook. You can just
Yeah.
push the button, shares it right to the Teams channel, and then I'll answer them in the Teams channel, right? And now I'll do something like I'll mention them in the answer back, so it'll pull them into the Teams channel itself, right? The other
Yeah,
thing sometimes I will do is I'll send them an IM that says, "Hey, share that to Teams," right?
absolutely.
Don't send that to me in email. Share it to Teams.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, this is great, Scott. I think creating your team in this structure is great for a new employee, as you gave us. It helps you have that one-stop shop to find all your data, capture sentiment, and have that bi-directional communication, right? I know we didn't hit on that as much, but when you send that email, it's kind of that one way, and it gets, those reply to alls, it gets lost in the shuffle. But when you post it in Teams, it allows that bi-directional communication. So. Fantastic. Is there anything else you'd want to leave our viewers with, Scott, if they're wondering how to get started?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's great tips out there. The biggest tip I would say is get in contact with your local customer success manager. They will walk you through. Millen is one of our greatest in the organization, second best pop blocker, but best CSM out there. And they can help you get going.
I love it. Scott, thank you so much for your time. It's always good to hang out with you, and we will
Yeah.
talk to you later.
All right, Millen.
Thank you.